Rachel, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad to see you
I
again.
know. Thanks for having me back on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hey, Rachel, listen, I wanted to have this conversation with you because there's something affecting all of us right now, and it's inflation. I mean, it's the highest it's been in 40 years. You and I weren't even alive. And I think what I'd love to do with you today is really talk about something that I believe is affecting more than people's wallets, and that's their peace. So I suppose let's start here. What's your take on everything happening right now? How are you and Winston even just approaching this at home?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do feel like even the last 2 years that we had been through with the pandemic, it's almost kind of primed everyone to feel this level of uncertainty and completely being out of control. Because I feel like that's been the last 2 years of our lives. So it's almost like we're weary of this, it feels like bad things are just constantly happening. And so, yeah, I mean, I think for me, just with my money, with our money specifically, it's like we've done the things that we teach, and over 12 years, it has caused a strong, foundation with the numbers, right? The dollars and cents there. But it's still this eerie, I don't know, perspective, I guess, to live in this world where you're like, I really don't know what's happening. And there are so many things that are out of control. So whether it is inflation or the war or still stuff about COVID, mask or no masks on airplanes, like that was a big thing, even just like 2 days ago. So it just feels like the thing kind of just keeps going. And so for me, I really do. I'm like, I just surround myself with people, number one, that are not freaked out all the time and paranoid and wringing their hands. Like there's a level of hope that is injected by people that you're around. So if you're sitting there watching the news 24/7, flipping between CNN and Fox, and you're just like back and forth, you're gonna drive yourself crazy. And so there is this level of just living that you almost kind of have to just press into, even though it's hard and it's uncomfortable. And there still can be a level of fear that may not completely go away. But I think the voices of who's talking to you, whether it's from a TV or social media or people, is really important of what we're inputting into our brains.
No, I love that. In fact, folks, I really want today's conversation with Rachel to be ultra practical so you can walk away from this and go, okay, I almost have a checklist that I can kind of keep in my back pocket to keep me grounded. Now, Rachel, I love that. Guarding what we're receiving as input. But you said something a minute ago that I want to drill down on, and that's the sense that everything's out of control. But you've been teaching something that I love, which is focusing on what we can control. What can we control?
Yeah, we can control, obviously, the people we hang out with. I think we can control our work ethic and deciding what we're going to do. I just took a debt-free scream on the Ramsey Show just yesterday from this girl, single woman, and she worked 96 hours. That was her tops, 96 hours a week for 9 months, Chris. Like, insane. She was a nurse, so she had 2 full-time jobs, and then she took, and I even asked her on the show, I was like, will you just walk me through your schedule of what it was like in a given week? Like, that is insane. And so again, I know not everyone's going to go to that extreme, and you shouldn't be at that extreme for a long period of time because I think that's just unhealthy. But her motivation, but she could control it. She's like, hey, I can pick up more hours. I can make more income and get out of debt. I can do this. So there's this level of work ethic that we can control in a sense. I think we can control once our paycheck hits our account and we're like, okay, what am I going to choose to do with it? I can control that. And so, yeah, there are these pieces you can, but I hate to say too, it's not like it's this exciting, flashy news story types of things. It's kind of the boring, mundane day-to-day, but being diligent in the day-to-day and in the boring details of life is what gets you ahead.
Well, I love that. And let's stay right there. Okay, if we backtrack and go to the moment the paycheck hits, most of us are paid via direct deposit, ACH. So let's go from that point. The paycheck hits via automatic deposit, direct deposit, I should say. What could we be thinking about? Now, this is something I've heard you talk about with your dad, which I love, and it's setting up automatic transfers. So we're actually being ultra proactive on the front end and telling our money where to go. You want to talk more about that and even the power in establishing direction for the money the moment it hits?
Yes, yeah. If there's any place that you can do that direct, that it just comes out, it makes it easier, not only just to keep up with details, but also there's a level of consistency. Some bills, your water, your electricity, those may fluctuate a little bit month to month. But the things that you know for sure that are consistent, that's going to help you budget. The more consistent that you know and can predict, the closer you're going to be to having your budget work. And so when you're able to put things in place, yes, like automatic withdrawals or whatever, that you choose to do, it is helpful. And again, from not just a planning standpoint, but for me, a practical standpoint, because I'm sure people listening, our lives we're busy. Everyone's busy. I don't care if you have kids, if you're not, if you're married, if you're not, there's something constantly happening. And so to make things a little bit easier that you're going to have to pay anyways, it kind of takes that tactical step and removes it because it automatically is going to happen.
People maybe are a little freaked out by the word budget, and I know that is just a passion point for you. It is for me too, and I think this is why. And folks, I want you to hear my heart on this. When we spend our money on paper first, we're drafting a vision. Rach, can you pull some of the fear and the aversion to budgeting off of this conversation and just speak to people who are saying, listen, we're actually creating vision so that we can control what's actually happening from the inside out, the fear, the anxiety, because really that's the issue behind the issue.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think there are a couple of reasons why people are fearful or just like, ugh, with the budget. Number one, I think there is a level that people just don't want to know about their money. Now, if they're listening to your podcast, Chris, I'm sure there's a level of intentionality they have with their life, and they're like, no, I'm wanting to learn and grow and all of it. But there are people that are like, I would rather be in denial and not know, which sounds crazy to control freaks, like me, but really it almost feels better. It feels better to be in denial than to face the facts. And so that's one fear of the budget is that I don't even want to know. So I would encourage and push you. You have to know. If you're going to win long term, you have to know. And usually your financial situation is not as bad as you think it is. Like in our heads, when things are in our heads and they're not said out loud, I think things bubble up and fear bubbles up and it ends up magnifying versus when it's actually the reality. Like I was just talking to a friend and she has this work thing and she's like, how do you get over the fear? And I'm like, honestly, the anticipation sometimes of life is scarier than when you're actually doing it. So do the budget. So don't let that fear stop you. Some people have a fear that they're not going to have any fun and enjoy it. That was my fear with budgeting. But that's not the case. You can still enjoy. I always say a budget is permission to spend. You get to decide your budget. It's not this outside person doing it. So maybe you don't really, have a need for clothes very often. You're like, I don't really need that. So I can put this money here. I enjoy going out to eat more. So I'm going to up that category. You get to decide where you spend your money, but you're just giving it a purpose. And so I love what you said too about the vision casting, because that's one of my beefs about credit cards. Honestly, not only that people don't pay it off, we can have a whole other thing there, but even if you pay it off every month, you are still paying for stuff that has already been done. You're throwing your money to the past versus saying, hey, when I'm spending on a budget and I'm looking forward, everything is going forward and nothing. I don't have to look at the past anymore. I get to go forward. And there is something powerful about that. When that's your plan and that's what you're looking at. You're looking at that windshield versus the rearview mirror.
Okay, well, let's stay there then, because you talk about the lifestyle creep. And this is a huge temptation for a lot of people. We get that 3% raise or 5% raise, or we get that bonus, and somehow the spending just kind of treads upward with that increase. You want to put a little more stake in the lifestyle creep. How do we get a hold of it? What do we need to do to take control of that, especially in a time like right now? Because, Rach, again, you and I weren't even alive.
Yeah.
90% of the listeners right now weren't even alive in early 1982 when things were out of control. Mm-hmm. So this is new ground. But our parents, like I heard your dad say this. He's like, listen, we've been through this.
Yeah.
We'll get through this.
Yeah.
Talk some sense into us in terms of like, getting us a little grounded in perspective, maybe.
Yes. So the lifestyle creep is just another example of how money is behavior. That if your habits don't change, it doesn't matter how much money you make. And that's why people are shocked when people make $200,000 and they're still living paycheck to paycheck. They're like, well, how? Because it's the same habits that they had when they were making 80 or 60 or 50. And they haven't changed their habits. And so the lifestyle creep is going to happen unless you have a decision that you're like, okay, I'm going to do something different with my money. And so when you have debt and you don't have an emergency fund and you get that raise, you have to be intentional and say, I have to put that money because it's going to get you to winning money faster. Because fast forward 2 years from now and you get the raise, guess what? You get to enjoy it. Yeah, you may decide, hey, I'm going to give a little bit more. You may invest a little bit, but we got some more money to spend. So it's not like whenever you get a raise that you can never enjoy your money. But when you don't have a solid financial foundation and you have debt and you're living paycheck to paycheck and you don't have savings and you get a raise, you need to tell that money and say, hey, that has to go to help that foundation and to get ahead. Our big thing is like, I want you to win with money. I want you to build wealth so you can enjoy life and help others and be generous. And to get from point A to point B, what's the fastest route? What's the road that's going to get me the fastest? And when you get a raise and you take that money and you don't know where it goes, it's like you're yielding off the freeway, right? And you're going to go a longer way around. So if you just stay focused with it, with your income, it can take you so far. But again, I think we even have like I deserve it, I work hard, that whole mantra too. So you really just have to fight back against a lot of those emotions and those feelings and know for a short period of time, here's what my life's going to look like. And it's not going to be great. I'm going to be sacrificing, but it's so worth it, because for a short period of time, you sacrifice for long-term winning.
That's so good. Okay, side question then. If our income is our largest wealth building tool, let's say a bunch of people listening right now have educational debt, and there's an opportunity to contribute to a 403B or 401k at work with matching. What do you tell them? Pay off the student loan first, then invest, or dabble in both? What's your best advice?
Yes, so I know I get pushback from this a lot, but I mean, I would pause retirement. I'd pause your Roth. I would pause 401k and 403b, and I would throw everything at that debt, because number one, you're going to be okay. You're going to be able to catch up. Even if it takes you 3 years to pay off those loans, you're going to catch up when you actually have the money. Because when you have no payments and you have cash as an emergency fund, and you press play on retirement and you fund 15% of your income into retirement, you actually have money to contribute that's not going to stress you out. And so it just frees up your income in order to do that. And then, once your house is paid off and you go down the baby steps, then you're like, okay, I have even more money to invest. And instead of paying a mortgage payment, what if I invested that just in a mutual fund? That's pretty awesome, right? Like, so you actually are freeing up your income to build wealth on the latter side of this plan. But it's worth pausing for now and being focused too, Chris. That's another thing, is when you're trying to do 18 things at once, you're not going to get as much progress. But when you stay focused on something, it gives you momentum and power.
Hey, any more thoughts on focus then? Because this thought just popped into my head. Fear steals our focus. It distorts our focus. What do we need to do to see the real fear that many people may have? Because, for a lot of people, this time in life is a major inconvenience. But for others, it's like you were talking about, I think last week I heard, or the week before on the Ramsey show, living paycheck to paycheck right now is even harder. How do we drill down on focus when fear is such a player in our day today? Yeah,
I don't want fear to be your pure motivator, because I think it kind of, you get drained from that for a while, but it can be a little good of a jump start motivator where you're like, okay, because the truth is, if you are living paycheck to paycheck and you have no savings in the bank, inflation's hitting, things are happening, who knows about what's going on with your job, there is legitimate reason to be fearful. So I'm like, I don't want to Pollyanna and be like, you shouldn't be fearful. I'm like, no, there's a level of like, oh my gosh, what I've been doing isn't working. So hopefully it's your wake-up call to say, okay, I got to do something different. So again, that fear might kind of be that punch in the gut, that motivator for you to change. And so it can't be your long-term motivator, but it can be something to say, okay, I got to do something different with my money because what I've been doing isn't working. And so, you don't want it to take off focus, but it actually could, in a weird way, bring you to focus for a little bit. And focus on the truth and what's going on.
That's so good. Okay, so food prices are up double digits over last year at this time. Then there's gas prices. I think the last number I saw was 50%.
I saw 50%,
yeah, something like that. So a lot of millennials and Gen Z are with us today. Help all of us get smarter with necessary items like food and gas, because we can't get around those, and they're through the roof. So what do we need to know, and then what do we need to do with those specific things, Rach?
I know. So during this time that we're living, there are probably going to be other things in your life that you're going to sacrifice in order to have these things covered. And so food, shelter, utilities, and transportation, those are your four walls is what we call it. Those things are top priority. Focus on those. Everything else, cable, Netflix, all of it. Like you may have to pause some of that for now. You can press play later, but really focusing on those four walls. And then just being smart about it too, Chris, because I think there's, even grocery shopping, it's the number one line item in people's budgets that is busted every month. Like the food is so hard. And so because it is difficult, you just have to be smart. You have to be smart. And I look at things, honestly, I'm on baby step 7. We're financially totally fine, but I was shopping and avocados were like $1.75 an avocado. And even I was like,
it's so
I'm sorry,
cool.
I don't like avocados that much. We're gonna do something else. So I'm like, be smart about it. Like, be smart about it. And there may be things right now that you're like, I'm just not gonna buy that specific thing and save $8, and again, it may feel like nothing. Yeah. But those little decisions on something big like a grocery bill can make a huge difference. And where you shop too. That's another thing. Looking at gas prices. Gas Buddy is an app and it's a great one. And I'm like, it's going to give you a list of stuff. So looking and actually comparing prices more than ever, I think is really, really wise. And again, where you buy your food. Mm-hmm. Different grocery stores they're gonna cost different things depending on where. And so maybe there's for the next 6 months, maybe you say, okay, I'm not going to go shop at that super fancy, nice grocery store, and I'm going to go to Aldi or whatever it is. And you actually will see a savings in there. And it doesn't have to be forever, but during this time to make sure these things are covered for you and your family, it's important.
I got to say, speaking of those super fancy grocery stores that I love, the one in particular that I'm talking about is in Cool Springs, and boy, the fresh ginger juice at that one with the green awning. I love that place.
You're like, it's so good. It's so good.
It's so good. Okay, well, here's the challenge then, because even warehouse prices are increasing. Mm-hmm. Like Costco. I love Costco. And I'm single and don't have kids, and so my Costco bill is substantially less than many others. But any tips or strategies for even warehouse purchases? And I think this is why I want to ask, because right now, coming out of 2020 pandemic, it's easy, number one, to overspend, but then overbuy. Yes, number one, out of panic, but number two, out of this whole scarcity mindset. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think when it's, perishable items, obviously things that can go bad, you need to make sure that you get it. So I'll give you a legit real life example. On Monday, Costco. Yeah. Yep. And the raspberries were like $5. I was like, that's amazing, because at Publix, you get a little thing of raspberries for $5. I thought, that's great. We haven't even opened them. I'm like, my kids ate shortly. And so I'm like, dang it, Rachel. So I'm like, I'm probably going to freeze those and whatever. But we can get caught up on the perishable items. I'm just saying, like, really make sure that you use them, because it can feel like you're saving money compared to something else. But if you're going to use them, then you just wasted money. So that. And then, if there's non-perishable items that you need, mapping it out and saying, okay, do I need all of this for now? Is that going to save me over the course of time? And it might. Usually buying in bulk does save you. But again, it's just looking at those, even the tags, there, you can see the price per ounce and all of that. And just take a second when your budget's tight. I'm like, it's worth doing some quick math just to figure out, hey, is this good? Will my family use it? Do we need it?
Okay, so that's super helpful. Now, talk to people who are listening right now who haven't received a pay increase at work, not even a COLA increase. So how do they get smarter and essentially tighter with the budget week to week to no fault of their own? They're doing great at work, but they just haven't received a pay increase nor a cost of living adjustment, which is really hard. So it's like getting a demotion a little bit. What do they do? What do they think?
Yeah, it's either looking on the expenses side to say, okay, what are places that we can either cut or pull back on here? Were there luxuries that we had that were like, hey, again, for the next couple months, we may just press pause on those. So it's either that expense side or it's the income side, because what's crazy too is the job market, it's insane. And so the income that people are making in market value, market rate, it has increased with all of this. So there's this juxtaposition, and Ken Coleman, I was talking to him on my show actually, and I was talking about how to ask for a raise and how you do that in a respectful way that doesn't feel slimy or greasy, because I think a lot of people feel weird asking for a raise. And the way he put it, I loved. He was like, hey, just talk to your leader and say, hey, I want to contribute more to this company, and I want to be able to help more. So what are some strategies that I can do so that I can grow in this area? And then, on the back end, obviously the compensation, that is what I'm looking for, but like, I want to put in the work to do it. And so, you're not sounding like, I just want a raise to have a raise, all of that. But man, you really are showing a level of, I'd say like servanthood, humility, like a lot of that with your leader at work, which is big. So I would say that.
It's huge.
And then, or if nothing moves or budget, if nothing's moving in your current role, does it look like, hey, maybe I should look outside? But I also think too, Chris, I kind of hesitate to even say that, because if you love your job and you love where you're at, hopefully this all kind of fixes itself, because I think a lot of people are running to the paychecks and they're getting, a $5,000 raise or a bump, but they're going to a more toxic work environment, or they're sacrificing other things in order just to get that. And I'm curious over the long haul, in the next 24 months, how we see people's joy and happiness with work when they're just chasing money versus more of a holistic look, if that makes sense. So I think there's a couple ways to go about it, but we just have to be wise and smart and know that hopefully this will all kind of work itself out.
Yeah, and my hope for people too, remote work has taken off in the last couple of years.
Yes.
So I'm thinking about saving money on gas even. And what I want to say to people is, if you have the option to work remotely, freaking do it. You'll save money on gas. And so, Rach, what I heard you say in there, which I love, is perhaps a theme of margin, creating margin. And I think that applies to multiple domains of life. But any strategies that you'd like to share around creating financial margin? What are the things we should look at? What are the things we should consider to be long range in our mindset and not so myopic? This is a hard season. I get it. Yeah. But we can't be myopic.
Yeah. So, a couple of things that I would say just tactically to look at. Number one is insurance. Insurance is one of those things that you just kind of get that withdrawal, like we were talking about, like every quarter it just comes out and all of that. And a lot of people don't relook at insurance rates. So I would relook at all of your insurance. You could literally save thousands of dollars just by getting a different plan. And so relooking at that, if you are still in debt and don't have an emergency fund, pausing your 401k contributions out of your paycheck to bring more in. When you just did your taxes, are you going to get a huge refund? Because if you are, you can adjust your withholdings and get more back in your paycheck. So those are a couple of kind of bigger splashes that you can make. But again, that idea of margin, it gives you freedom. It gives you options and where you can cut. And sometimes it's worth cutting the material things that we think we want to have peace of mind. So instead of saying, oh yeah, we're going to budget, $100 to Amazon every month just for whatever, you could fill in the blank of what that is. To be like, well, what if you cut that and said no to that part of your life, and it frees you up here just to give you a breath of fresh air? It's worth it. Like, it's worth having that peace of mind to have that margin. So I would look to say, what is that? What's worth it to you to cut to be able to create that margin?
Stay on tax advice for a second, because I've had a bunch of friends in the last couple months. At the time of recording here, we are late April. Tax day just was last week, or actually just a couple days ago, and people are saying, oh my gosh, I'm so pumped. I got this huge refund. That's not necessarily a good thing. Why?
I know. I don't see it as a good thing at all, because you basically just took what you earned and gave it to Washington for 9 months, 12 months, even longer if you're not getting that refund soon. And it's just sitting there and it's not making money. So to me, it is not great. And there's this weird disconnect too, that when you get a check in the mail, it feels like free money, and it's like, oh my gosh, look at this, look at all this, let's go have fun and spend it. I would feel that way. And I'm like, oh, the disconnect of that. You worked hard for that. Like, that is money that you earned. And it's yours, and it could have been put to good use through this entire year. And instead, it was just sitting in Washington. So I really encourage people to get as close as you can to that zero, where you don't owe a lot, but also that you're not getting a huge refund. And so it's funny, because we talk about this a lot during tax season, and even like on Instagram, I had a couple of people message like, I owed $7, Rachel. I was so close. And I was like, I'm impressed. Getting that close to zero really is, it should be your goal when it comes to taxes.
I got $19 back this year.
There you go, Chris. Look at you. We owed a little bit, which is never fun. But I would almost rather owe than get a refund. I don't know if that's like super twisted, 100%. But that's how I feel.
No, I totally get it, because I'm keeping more of my money in on the front end.
Yeah,
so
totally,
I get
it.
Yep. I laughed really hard because you and your dad were talking about the 3 little pigs on the Ramsey show a bit ago. And then, Rach, you popped in. You were like, oh, well, what about the 4th pig? Yes. The one who has done everything right. The house is built out of bricks. I've done everything correctly, and it's still not working out. That's really hard. Talk to people who relate to that.
Yeah. I mean, there was elements I felt like the 4th pig where I'm like, I've been doing this, but man, it still hurts, right? The avocado, the $2 avocado. I'm like, I'm not going to buy it. Like it still hurts. And so,
of course it does.
Yeah, I think there's just a level of awareness, and there's, in a weird way, I think too, for people that have been doing what we teach and that they're building wealth and that they're winning and all of it. There is a part that I'm like, okay, good. I'm kind of glad it still hurts because you're still in reality, right? I think you can like live in la la land at times and all of that. And I'm like, there's a level of reality of what's going on. So you have a pulse on the world and what's happening. And again, not to make you dramatic, like Dave called me dramatic on the air. I was like, I don't know if I'm being dramatic. But there's a level of it that can be just drama filled that you don't want to hang around your life. But there also is a reality that like, hey, this is happening in the world and we're all feeling it. And I think to say it out loud, it's true because we are. So the 4th pig, I just threw that out there on the air. I didn't know if it was going to catch steam, but a lot of people were like,
it landed.
I feel it. Yes. I'm like, I know. That's how I feel.
Sign me up. I'm right there with you. Well, let's talk about a savings tactic I really appreciate, and that is around the topic of impulse spending. You pitched the stat that Americans on average spend $276 freaking dollars impulsively every month. So create some tactical clarity on this for us, because honestly, I think in a time where inflation is the highest it has been in 40 years, we could use that, not to say every American has $276 that we're spending, but we could use that to hedge against inflation and get even smarter. What should we do?
Yeah, for sure. I would ask the question, why are you spending it? Like if there are things on impulse, there's a reason that we're feeling good about it and like, oh, okay, I want to spend it there, right? So asking the question of why are we spending what we're spending? And for some of it, maybe there really is a good reason. You're going out to lunch with your friend, you didn't realize it, and, whatever. I don't know. There's many examples. But there's also the examples of being bored, and you kind of just want to get that adrenaline hit, and you're going to go shop online for a little bit. And maybe, gosh, I feel like I'm having a bad day. I'm going to go get me a great coffee. And, there's reasons why we spend. And so to realize, okay, I don't want my emotions and my circumstances to completely dictate my money. I want to, as much on the front end, plan for those things so that when I do go spend, I know it's coming out instead of kind of just this, we're going to just kind of live off the seat of our pants, if that makes sense.
It does. Well, we started here in the conversation, but I want to go back to it because there is the issue behind the issue, which is for a lot of people, first of all, anger. And then behind the anger is fear and fear of scarcity and all that. What do we do with that? Now, I want to put this big asterisk on this because we have an advantage. Both of us follow Jesus. So there's a trust factor that we have in this. But what do we do with this systemic fear that, now I'm just not sleeping well because I don't know how this is going to work out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes back a little bit to what we talked about earlier, too, is just to know what you can control and to say, okay, what are the things within my control that I can change, pivot, do what I need to do to make the situation better. I would focus on facts and know what really is going on, because you may just be spiraling, don't necessarily have to be, but you are for whatever reason. And then if there's anything that, again, I guess this goes back to the control thing, but if there's a fear of, I feel like I'm going to lose my job, or I don't know if my kids are, X, Y, and Z, I don't know, whatever it is, like if there's any human in the equation that you can go and talk to and resolve any of the fear, that's a great option to do, just to get actual facts of what's happening. Because there's a lot of stories that we can play in our mind. I think Brene Brown talks about that, but we can tell ourselves something that's not even really happening or even real. And so when you can debunk some of that, it gives you a level of peace. But I think faith, I mean, you brought it up, but it's true. There is this underlying current of not being shaken because you kind of know the end of the story eventually. And I think that's a big part of it too.
Isn't that interesting? Just the other day I was writing to my email list. I do a weekly newsletter, and it's just 5 minutes of mental health, emotional health, spiritual growth tips. And I was talking the other day exactly about what you said, shaking. when everything that can be shaken is being shaken, there is actually a promise that we don't have to be shaken, because Psalm 16 says, I've set the Lord always before me. Because he's at my right hand, I won't be moved. And so I think I just want to encourage people listening today, listen, shaking is around us. Everything that can be shaken is being shaken. You get these calls every single day, but we don't have to be shaken in the midst of that. So that sort of lends itself to, and we've been juggling around this a little bit, mindset. Any other mindset tips that we should employ, Rachel? Because mindset really matters.
Yeah, it does. I would say too that we can place as a culture and a society a lot of stock and value in money. And I always tell people, your net worth is not your self-worth. And we can go through this idea that, like, man, if I'm doing well financially, it kind of can puff you up and give you this sense of security, which I think money can bring a level of it, but it's not entirely stable. Like, it's not, if that's your only sense of security, if your security is put in things that can be taken away or stolen, gone, evaporated, like, well, that's a shaky place to be. And so making sure that money has its proper place in your life. And in your head. So obviously it's a tool. That's how I always teach people. It is a tool to help you in life. So yes, it is the tool that we use to buy food. It is the tool that we use to put gas in our car, or to enjoy, a night out with friends, whatever it is. But that's what it is. It's just a tool. It's not who we are. It's not our self-worth. It's not our identity. And so making sure that it's in the proper place in our lives is really important.
That's good. Well, I had a bunch of questions come in on Instagram after I had posted, hey, Rachel's going to be on. Any questions that would be pertinent? And a couple came in that I thought would be really great for everyone to hear about. First is this. Right now, with inflation, what are your thoughts, Rachel, on investing in Airbnb property for income?
I'm not like fully against it. I want you to be completely debt free before you go and invest beyond retirement. But there's a lot of things that can go wrong in that kind of situation. And so I know a lot of people that they've killed it, and it's great. But you also get more headaches because of just, you may have to pay a management company to go and take care of flipping the property every week and all. There's just a lot more logistics with something like that. Versus saying, hey, what if I went and bought 2 condos and rented them out for, $2,000 a month or what, I don't know, whatever it would be in your area. And you have the same renters on a 12-month lease. There's probably going to be a little bit of less headache with something like that. So I don't think it's necessarily wrong, but I would say just know what you're walking into.
Super helpful. Okay, second question came in is this. Should I decrease my Roth IRA contributions to compensate for inflation and then free up more available cash every week?
I would still encourage that 15% of your income going into retirement. So if you're still there, I would not decrease it from there. But I know some people, I just talked to a friend actually this week, and she was like, hey, we just max out everything. But my job has been cut in half, my hour, all of this, and I feel like we don't have a lot of margin. I'm like, well, listen, you don't have to max everything out. Just do it at 15%, and that's going to give you more breathing room. So that's what I encourage. That 15% rule is pretty black and white for me. So if you're above 15%, back it down, and then I'll give you more cash flow. But if not, I would stay at that 15% because, again, we're going through a really shaky period right now. But fast forward, 20 years or 25 years, 30 years when you retire, you're going to want that money in there.
That's so good. Okay, so I have a lot of friends who are holding out for college educational debt to be eliminated by the government. What's your take on this? I don't think it's realistic. I think the government sucks at managing money.
I know, I'm with you. I just don't like placing my hope or my future, like what's going to be happening with my life in other people's hands. Again, call me a control freak, whatever you want to say, but there's just something powerful about knowing that you can do it. And when you sit there and you wait on other people to change your life, you're going to be waiting a really long time. And again, with the Biden administration specifically, they've talked a lot about it. And even something came out today. I read an article about it, but it wasn't in his budget. He was talking about forgiving, I think it was like $8 billion, which sounds like a lot, but out of trillions of dollars student loan debt, it's not a lot. And it's only going to be for public, and you have to go through all this criteria. And less than 2% of people up to date right now that have applied for student loan forgiveness have actually received it. So I'm like, it's not worth waiting around. It's really not. And I don't have a hard bent. I know people have very strong opinions on
Yeah.
well, you signed your name to a loan and you owe it. And I get that. And part of me is like, yeah, I can get there. But I also know that they're 18 years old and they got thrown into the system that they really didn't know. And there's this level of being naive and ignorant that they just don't know.
For sure.
And then they're stuck with it, which I hate that part of it. It feels so unjust to me. So I kind of go back and forth with it. But if the government's going to forgive loans and they're saying the loan program did not work because we're having to forgive them, so stop the problem. So it's a whole thing.
That's exactly right. I'm thinking to myself, logic, okay, wait, they're the ones who are giving it out in the first place. If this is going to be forgiven, they got to stop giving it out.
That's right. Exactly.
So,
I know. It makes no sense.
yeah. What's your take on buying a house right now? I mean, the market's up above value. Interest rates have been low, historically low, but they're rising.
They're going up, yeah.
Do we buy a house that's priced more than its value, say 30, 40% now, to take advantage of like a sub-4, sub-3 interest rate?
I mean, when it comes to buying a home, I mean, it's for most people, it's their largest purchase that they're ever going to make. When it comes to their net worth, it's one of the largest pieces of their net worth. So I really want you to just be ready. And so if you have at least 10%, 10 to 20% to put down, and on a 15-year fixed rate that your payment's no more than 25% of your take-home pay, if that's the formula and it works for you, you can. I mean, I think you could, but if you don't have to buy a home right now, I don't know if I would. And a lot of people are moving. I mean, as you know, I feel like you're here in Nashville. So I'm like, everyone's from California. Everyone coming here is from California is what it feels like. And so I'm like, if you're going to a new place, a new city, a new state, renting is really wise just to figure out where you want to be. And so instead of planning roots somewhere so deeply with buying a house.
So helpful.
So yeah, I mean, there's a part of me too, again, I hate to be wishy-washy on it, but if you're financially ready to buy a home, regardless of what the market's doing, you can buy a home. But also know you're buying at the top of what's going on. And so you want to think about that. That is it wise to do that? I don't know. And I think some places we're going to see those homes decrease, but I do think there are areas that are still going to be little bubbles because of taxes, really inexpensive places to live. And I do think there's places in Texas, even Florida, even Nashville, I would say, that it could be more protected than we realize. So they may not go down as far as we think, but other areas may soften. But who knows? We don't have a crystal ball, but yeah, I don't know.
No, that's helpful. Stay here. Then talk about top mistakes people make when buying a home in the first place, because a lot of listeners today might be on the cusp of making their very first purchase.
Yeah. A big mistake is letting the bank tell you what your budget is. So they're going to give you a number of what you qualify for. And if you go up to that number and you take it, you may have way too much house and you have no money to do other stuff. Like so many people are moving in. They're like, oh, I kind of want new furniture for the living room, or you have no margin to do any of that. And so when my husband and I, when we built, we put a budget in that we were like, okay, here's how much we will spend on the house. And it's less than what we could have done because I was like, I want a big old chunk to get curtains and to actually furnish it and to have some money there. So we got less house in order to do it. And again, that's what we valued in that process. But just remember that what the bank gives you, that probably is going to equal too much house for you. And so really to make your home a blessing and not a curse, having a big down payment, and again, your payment being no more than 25-30% of your take-home pay is really where I encourage you, because these people that have half of their income monthly going to a mortgage, it's going to be hard to get from that point A to point B of building wealth like we talked about. So let your house be a blessing, not a curse.
It's so good. Super practical conversation today, Rachel Cruze. You are just awesome. I'm so thankful that you've hopped on here again today. You're just becoming a regular here. Deloney was on last week. So
that's awesome.
All my Ramsey family, I love you all so much. Anything else today, Rachel, that listeners need to know, need to do before we hop off?
I just want to encourage people that there's still hope. I mean, I know everything feels like doom and gloom, but we're going to be okay. We really are. We're resilient. We've come through a lot as the human race through history, and we're going to get to the other side of this. And yes, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be hard. We're not going to have some bruises in the middle of it, but we really can. I think we're going to be okay. And I believe in the American economy enough to know, like, we're going to come back from that. The supply and demand, it's going to work itself out. We were all shut down because of COVID. Like, we're feeling the effects and the aftershake of everything that we went through the last 2 years. But I really, really, really do believe that it's all going to calm The little conspiracy theorist in me kind of rises up when I say that. But if I'm being very logical
Sure.
and being very truthful,
Yeah.
I really, really think we're going to be okay.
We've been here before. We came out. We're here now.
That's right.
We'll come out. Let it do its thing. So, Rachel, thanks again for joining me. Thanks for your time, as always. Tell people where to connect with you. Where are you hanging out these days?
Oh, thank you. My podcast, The Rachel Cruze Show, is on wherever you listen to
Yeah.
podcasts or YouTube. And I'm on all social media at Rachel Cruze. And
For
go
sure.
to rachelcruze.com as well for content.
Wonderful. Rach, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
today. I
thanks,
really
Chris.
appreciate
Thanks
your
for all
time.
you do, too. I appreciate being a guest.
Thank you. It's great to see you.